Hello, everyone. My name is Brett Leininger. I'm the Managing Director of Old Line Government Affairs. And for this edition of Online with Old Line, we are honored to introduce Senator Will Smith, representing District 20 in Montgomery County. And Will, we appreciate you. Before we get started, I just want to thank you for your service to our country.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Well, so maybe to start things off, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the district that you represent.
Sure. I grew up in Silver Spring here in Montgomery County, so right outside of Washington, D.C. The district is, I think, one of the more progressive areas. So it includes Tacoma Park and Silver Spring. And we've been called the Berkeley of the East Coast here in Tacoma Park. So it's an extremely progressive area, extremely diverse, well-educated, but growing in our immigrant population. So it's a vibrant center of the city, or of the state rather. And so it's growing fast. And so it's an ever-changing, evolving district. Changed a lot since I was young, and a heavy focus in on national politics. The great thing about this district is that you have folks that are in the nonprofit world, NGOs, government, cabinet officials, White House officials, members of Congress. Sometimes, from out of state, they live here in Montgomery County. So you'll see it's just a very interesting mix of folks in Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, and Montgomery County at large.
I bet it keeps you on your toes, that people know exactly what's going on, I'm sure.
That's right. I mean, though folks probably have trouble picking out their state delegate or state senator out of a lineup, they certainly are focused in and know their national figures and politicians.
Sure, that's great. Well, thanks for that background. So tell us, what inspired you to run for office? I've seen your biography; it's awesome. But just give the audience some perspective on what drew you to this.
I think growing up in Montgomery County, in Silver Spring, so close to Washington D.C., you're heavily influenced by politics all the time. And though my parents weren't, neither one of them were college graduates, and neither one of them were involved in politics on a personal level. My dad had this habit of reading the Afro and the Washington Post, and he would cut out articles every day, and he would make me read one with him. And so from basically middle school all the way up. And I would always come to him asking for $20 to go to the movies, take out my girlfriend or something like that. But he would sit me down and we would talk and discuss an issue, really as it related to usually African-American business or African-Americans in politics. And after every conversation, he'd cut this article out and he'd put it on a bulletin board in his little office. And over the course of years, and that bulletin board got several inches thick. And I remember when he passed away in 2006, and I was in law school, I came back and I walked into that room, and every single article, I was always kind of rushing past and through, but every single article represented a conversation that I had with my father. And every single article was an article about politics or Black business and success and involvement. And so you start to, when you pull back from things, when something like that happens, you start to realize what influences you. And though he wasn't a man of letters, so to speak, he was definitely a brilliant man, and he knew what he was doing. He was shaping me, even though I didn't know he was molding me. And I think that proximity to DC, and then also just things like that, just having those influencers from my parents and watching their struggle and sacrifice got me involved in public service of one sort or another.
Yeah, that's really an amazing story. That's really, really cool. And how you came back to it, and just to really then it's like, oh, that's what he was doing.
Yeah. So good parenting advice from me, I guess.
Yeah, right. That's great. So obviously, to me, you've had a meteoric rise in a quick fashion. Tell us your experience as to what you thought it might be like versus what has happened. And a lot has happened, and so maybe some background on that. when you came to the House and then to the Senate and then chairmanship, in lightning speed.
When I ran for the House of Delegates, when I was in law school, I developed a relationship with Professor and then State Senator Jamie Raskin. Mm-hmm. And though I was in Virginia and he was up here at American University, I came up here for a moot court tournament. And, we developed a relationship, we stayed in touch. And so when I came back into town, he helped me and mentored me through this process. So fast forward 2015, 16 timeframe, coming to the House, my expectation was just to be a contributing member of the House of Delegates. It was an honor of a lifetime to be elected. And I always viewed the House of Delegates and the Maryland General Assembly as, kind of what Kennedy would have referred to as the vital center of action. Because again, watching what happens in DC, things just take a long time. Very few folks have legislative accomplishments to speak of. And in Annapolis, you can sit down with a constituent in June. They can give you an idea and tell you a problem that they have. You can put that piece of legislation in January, and by the next October, it can be the law of the land. I mean, you really have an outsized influence and an ability to impact and affect people's lives in a positive fashion. And so that is what really energized me about the Maryland General Assembly. Yeah. So when Jamie went off to Congress, or when he said he wanted to go off to Congress, I said, what are you doing? You are one of the most, you're the most brilliant member of the General Assembly. You're, extremely effective. You are getting things done and improving the prospects of Marylanders' lives year in and year out. So why go off to Congress? And little did I know that the moment was just, it has history has a way of choosing the right person for the moment. He goes off to Congress. He's tailor-made for this moment, for the impeachment. You can't write this. And so literally no one else in the United States was more primed, ready, and suited for that position to be an impeachment manager in this historic time. He goes off, rises to national, international prominence, and so it shows you what I knew. But back in the Senate, I knew that if I could get into the Senate, that we were on the cusp of generational change. And I'm not just talking about policy, but for literally folks that had been in office, had been there for 20 or so years.
Without a doubt.
And yeah, exactly. And there was basically a fat middle of folks that had come in right after. And so just the way things work, I knew that if there were a spate of retirements of people that said, hey, I'm going to do something else, I've done my public service, that there would be some serious opportunity in the Senate. Never imagined there would be a chairmanship, but I knew that there would be opportunity to rise. And so timing is everything, as they said, and one thing led to another. And the unfortunate passing of Senate President Miller and retirements and things moving around, and that the rest is history, as it said.
Yeah, it's and the year in which it came, pandemic year, nothing major, just easy kind of dynamics going on. It's just,
just run of the mill stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you've learned how to run a committee virtually and in person. It's been pretty wild, and I think you've done it, executed it with great style and grace, and so kudos to you. And I can't even imagine just jumping in like that, just barely in the Senate, and then boom, here you are. But sometimes you just got to roll with it, and that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, just get it rolled. You learn on the job, but we've got a lot of great folks that help out, and great members, a great committee, fantastic Senate president who's brilliant and has really stepped into an impossible situation. Again, choosing the right person for the moment. A generational shift, right temperament, right intellect. It just, everything fits right. So it's an interesting time to be in the Assembly, and an honor to be in the position that I'm in, and honored to serve with Senate President Ferguson. And he's just done a great job. So
I bet your military background had prepared you for this kind of situation.
I think it gives you perspective and maybe planning. And so, I think especially when you deploy, you go overseas into, a completely different environment, into a war zone, things are different. But in Afghanistan, especially at that moment in time, I was over there during their election. They're having a presidential election, only their fourth Democratic election, during this iteration of governance, right? Ever Democratic election. But so the government of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan going through an election, you see this fledgling democracy. You're seeing the competition of ideas from the Taliban. You've got ISIS-K, and then you've got several ethnicities, Tajiks, Pashtuns, Uzbeks. It's an amazing opportunity to not only understand war, but also democracy and fledgling government. And so when you're overseas and you're kind of fighting for the values that we uphold here, you kind of tend to look back and reflect on your own community, your own country, and think if we are actually living up to those ideals here at home. And of course we are, but in so many instances we're falling short. And I think that you feel that more acutely when you're overseas and have you can look afresh and new. at the situation here. And look, lo and behold, I come back and then we have racial reckoning and then a pandemic. And I think those things highlight the inequities that I think run through society. And I think that, I mean, not to ramble on too much here, but there are a couple of events that are catalytic, like that are catalysts for that type of
Yes,
change.
without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, you think about George Stinney, 14-year-old black boy put to death by the electric chair, and the international rage and national rage and the spotlight that puts on our kind of our criminal justice system there. You think about Jesse Washington, the man who was lynched when people were having a picnic and kind of a social gathering. You get that image seared in your mind. You think about Emmett Till, who would have been 86 just 2 days ago.
Mhm.
His mother had the presence of mind to leave that coffin open so that everyone could see, what segregation and what life was really like. You think about the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and then you think of George Floyd. And all of these events have provided, or were the catalyst for broad-based systemic change, because they thrust to the national conscious things that you could no longer kind of remain willfully blind to. That
Exactly.
the vast majority of our society, we go to work, we go to Starbucks, we kind of, we ride the metro, we ride on the Beltway, we kind of go through the movements of life, but
Bump along, right?
we bump along. You forget the actual reality of large swaths of our society. And so those events, I feel like we don't take enough time to kind of step back in this moment that we're still very much in.
It's amazing.
Yeah, racial reckoning, and then a global pandemic, the likes of which haven't been seen since 1918. And it's just an amazing confluence of events that have created this moment in time. And I guess my hope is that we capture a lot of the lessons learned and innovations, and understand the inequities that have been exposed and act upon those moving forward. And we just don't lose those lessons as we kind of march forward.
I don't think it's just a conversation. I think there's actually change afoot. I think your reference to Maryland having that massive sea change really over the last 2 elections for various reasons, people are retiring, moving on to other offices. And this conversation is not one that's going away. So there's going to be action taken. I guess to that end, what would you say so far in your legislative career is your biggest accomplishment?
Well, personally, I think it's there are a couple things, but one was the Home Act, which passed 2 years ago, which essentially got rid of source of income discrimination for housing, and it's kind of one of the last vestiges of a system and a type of redlining that kept people not only segregated by race but by class and socioeconomic status. And when we got rid of that, we allowed folks to be able to pursue housing opportunities in areas of opportunity. So I'll just give you, it's any legal source of income, which was the bill that said, hey, look, you can't discriminate based on any legal source of income, which is, veterans benefits, Social Security, alimony, and Section 8 vouchers. And so basically you had large areas where housing developments were saying, look, we won't take Section 8 vouchers. We won't take that type of person. And the large majority, 70% of the people that hold vouchers are single women, parents with a job or two. And so if you can only afford to live in a place that's far away from public transit or far away from an economic opportunity or like a job or schooling, your ability to rise is handicapped. And so by allowing for folks to pursue housing opportunities in areas of financial opportunity and educational opportunity, I think you're going to help level the playing field so that the role of government can actually take its place, which is to facilitate and ensure, an equal chance and an unfettered start in the race of life. And it's not to tip the scale in one direction, but just to provide everyone an equal shot, the right to rise, so to speak. So I think personally that's one thing that comes to mind. But obviously we've just gone through parole reform and policing reform, which I'm tremendously proud of as well.
That's that the idea of kind of using this is the idea of the Section 8, that the monies you're giving them an opportunity to then get past that, right? It's not, and if you then get them into a community where there's more financial opportunity, then they graduate from that, and that's kind of the idea, right? I mean,
exactly the idea.
Otherwise it's just the government's just spending money and nothing's going to happen. So I've been very active, Boys and Girls Club and higher ed, serving on boards. And the whole idea for me is give access to education, because education is the key to economic freedom, and everybody deserves that opportunity. And it's I'm in sync with you. It's pretty powerful stuff.
No, it's great. I mean, and it's not exactly, look, it's just, again, people talk about nanny state or getting too involved in government or social. They use all sorts of proxy language, but honestly, we're just literally, I think that we're level set. We're in sync here, that the role of government is just to facilitate the ability for folks to rise and pursue their God-given talent. Exactly right.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's awesome. So what are your, like for the future, what are you looking at as far as policy initiatives, to the extent that you can share?
So I think one thing that I've been working on, it's not really within the purview of my committee, but there's a nexus between two in terms of, when folks end up in that criminal justice system and the educational opportunities. Look at states like Arizona, like their public school system. If you make $60,000 or less, or you are, if you are qualified for Pell Grants, you don't pay for college, but you're going to work, and we're not talking about, kind of watch the door jobs, or, cleaning or sitting at a library. You're actually in a lab working, developing research. You're crunching numbers, you're writing, you're doing rigorous academic work that will arm you with a skill and a background to succeed once you graduate. Though that's the type of system we need in Maryland, in our system. I really do think that if you're going to stay in Maryland and you're going to invest your talent and your tax dollars here for a period of 4 years or more in Maryland after you graduate, and you come from an impoverished background or an economically disadvantaged background, then you should have an opportunity to pursue our world-class university system without being saddled with debt. It doesn't mean you're getting free school; you're working for it. But I think those are the opportunities I think the state needs to provide to help keep that homegrown talent in Maryland, to allow for those people to excel financially and pursue their dreams. So that's one thing that I put forward. It's on my website and everything, but it's it came out. I started doing this work when kind of the free college thing was all the rage, and I think it got conflated with run. So, but it's
timing is everything, right?
Messaging is everything. I think there is a good case to be made there, and I think that would have a generational impact. And again, it's not really within the confines of my, under the purview of my committee, but it's something that I'm personally passionate about, because as a first generation college student myself, I understand the opportunities and the basically success.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm thankful every day for the education that I received. I worked really, really hard for it, but I had that perspective, but I also know I had advantages that others didn't. And you want generational impact. That's the only way that this stuff sticks, right? So that's cool. I think it's really awesome. So to wrap things up, what's one unique thing or fun fact about you that nobody knows?
Nobody knows. I don't know if it's a fun fact. I sing to my daughter every morning and night. Terrible voice. I mean, clear a room, but she likes it. So it's terrible. I'm not going to give you a little sample of it. It's awful, but
awesome.
There you go. That's probably that's a random factoid, I guess.
That's very cool. Very good. Well, thank you, Chairman Smith, Will, for taking time to be with us. We look forward to working with you in the future. We have in the past, and it's always been a joy, and appreciate your openness. And for more conversations with legislators, with online, with Old Line, please visit oldlinelobbying.com. And again, we appreciate you taking the time.
Red, thank you very much, and thank you for all the work you do. Look forward to working with you in Annapolis.